Before you hear this unbelievable true story, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss another deep emotional drama on this channel. Also, please take a quick second to leave a comment down below with your real-time location and let me know exactly where in the world you are watching from today. For nearly 18 long years, my entire family genuinely believed that I was just a useless slacker, drifting endlessly from one temporary odd job to another. Every single time we sat down together for a family dinner, my parents and my younger brother would make subtle jokes about my total lack of direction in life, completely unaware that I was actually serving overseas as a high-risk military bomb technician. I never bothered to correct their harsh assumptions or explain why I was gone for long stretches of time. While they casually mocked my complete lack of ambition, I was quietly using my military paychecks to cover my parents' property taxes, paying off their debt, and carrying physical scars from a classified combat mission that I was strictly forbidden from talking about with anyone back home. I finally returned to my quiet hometown just 6 days before my younger brother Brandon was scheduled to get married. My mother had prepared the small unheated apartment sitting directly above our garage, which was the exact same place she always shoved me whenever I came home between my secret deployments downstairs in the main house. The entire family was bustling round in a state of high stress, endlessly debating flower arrangements, reception music, and complex seating charts for the big day. Not a single person in my family bothered to ask how I had traveled back to town or what kind of work I was doing to survive. They simply assumed I was broke as usual and accepted my presence as an unfortunate background detail. I kept my mouth shut and helped out wherever I could, knowing that raising any questions would only trigger another round of disappointed lectures about my wasted potential. On Saturday morning, we all gathered at a local formal wear shop so Brandon and his groomsmen could undergo their final suit fittings. Brandon stood high on a raised wooden platform in the center of the showroom, loudly entertaining his best friends with dramatic stories while I quietly operated a heavy garment steamer against the back wall, making myself useful while remaining completely invisible to everyone. When one of his groomsmen turned around and politely asked what I did for a living, Brandon immediately burst out laughing in front of the entire room. He loudly declared that I did absolutely nothing for long periods of time and claimed that I basically lived off our parents' hard-earned money. My father simply chuckled into his coffee cup, completely agreeing with the cruel assessment. I did not feel any fresh pain from the comment, mostly because old insults gradually turn into familiar household furniture after you hear them for enough years. I reached across the rack to grab the next suit jacket, and as I stretched my arm upward under the bright overhead lights, my left sleeve naturally slid back toward my elbow. The large, severe skin graft covering my wrist and forearm was suddenly exposed for everyone in the shop to see. Brandon's best man, a guy named Marcus, instantly stopped smiling the second his eyes landed on the disfigured flesh. He walked directly over to me with an intense expression, pointing at my arm and asking where on earth I had received such a terrifying burn scar. I quickly pulled my cuff down to cover the damage and casually dismissed his concern by claiming it was just an old work accident. Instead of dropping the subject, Marcus stared at me in total disbelief, slowly backed away without saying another word, and walked outside the front door to place an urgent phone call. Roughly 20 minutes later, two older men wearing tactical boots suddenly rushed through the front entrance of the suit shop in a state of sheer panic. One of them stopped dead in his tracks, stared at my face with wide eyes, and quietly uttered my old military call sign under his breath. The entire fitting room fell into a heavy, uncomfortable silence as everyone turned to see what was happening. Marcus immediately stepped forward and explained the incredible truth to the stunned crowd. 12 years earlier, in a dangerous war zone, their entire platoon had been pinned down inside a deep, narrow trench with enemy gunfire closing in fast from all directions. A massive buried explosive was blocking their only clear escape route, and their team was completely out of time. I had voluntarily crawled forward alone into the dirt to disarm the lethal device. While I was working on the wires, A secondary explosive device suddenly ignited right beneath my left arm, setting my sleeve completely on fire in an instant. Instead of pulling back or screaming for help, I pinned the burning fabric directly beneath my knee to smother the flames and kept my hand steady until I successfully disabled the primary bomb. Thanks to that terrifying choice, 11 men managed to escape that valley alive that day. Marcus had personally carried my bloody body into the evacuation helicopter, but because of strict military protocols, he was never given my real name and spent the next decade searching for the mysterious hero who saved his life. Brandon's face completely drained of color as he processed the revelation, while my father stood entirely frozen in place as if the floor had suddenly shifted beneath his feet. I looked at the trembling men and quietly told them that many brave people were present that day, and I had simply done my part like everyone else. Once the chaotic scene calmed down, I calmly picked up the steamer and finished smoothing out Brandon's jacket, simply because leaving an assigned task unfinished had always bothered my conscience. Later that evening, my father slowly followed me out to the driveway in the cold night air. He cleared his throat and attempted to offer a stilted apology for the terrible things he had said over the years, but I immediately raised my hand and stopped him in his tracks. The following night, I finally sat down with my parents in the living room and revealed the entire truth about my life, explaining how I secretly enlisted at 18 to save the family business and cover their house taxes for 9 full years. My mother broke down into heavy tears when she realized that every Sunday phone call she received from me had actually come from a military rehabilitation courtyard, while she casually complained about church curtains. Right in the middle of our emotional conversation, Brandon burst through the front door looking absolutely furious and accused me of making the family look like fools. I looked him dead in the eye and reminded him that I had simply allowed them to be wrong for 18 years, while he had personally chosen how loudly to announce his ignorance to the world. For the next 3 days, I completely refused to reach out or save him from his own deep embarrassment, letting him sit in the heavy reality of how he had treated me for his entire life. At the break of dawn on the morning before the wedding, a quiet knock sounded at my door. I opened it to find Brandon standing there holding 2 cardboard cups of coffee, genuinely asking me to tell him the entire story from my perspective. I invited him inside and walked him through every detail of that mission, explaining that real courage was rarely dramatic, but rather the quiet decision to take the next necessary step regardless of the pain. Brandon dropped his head into his hands and wept, admitting he felt disgusted for mocking me in front of a man whose life I had saved. From that moment forward, Brandon changed his behavior through real actions, moving my seat to the head family table and asking permission before inviting Marcus' former squad mates to the ceremony. When I sat down at the reception dinner the following evening, I discovered a small folded card resting quietly beside my plate containing the handwritten names of the 11 men who had survived that day. Later, Brandon stood up to give his groom toast, thanking the person who taught him that true hard work is the silent effort you put in long before anyone notices. He honored my secret sacrifices, raised his glass high, and then intentionally averted his eyes to grant me total privacy while the entire room clapped. A short while later, my father walked over with tears in his eyes, asking me for a dance, and promising that he was done telling false stories about my life and was simply going to be proud of who I really was. Near midnight, as the reception began to wind down, I walked outside and joined Marcus and his fellow veterans for a quiet drink under the stars. There were no grand speeches, formal salutes, or uncomfortable questions as I slowly rolled my left sleeve all the way up to my elbow. My massive burn scar rested openly beneath the dim patio lights while we casually discussed home repair projects and local youth sports. Not a single person at that table stared at my damaged skin or made me feel like an outsider. That completely ordinary, peaceful moment felt far greater than any military medal or public award I could have ever received in my entire life. Leaving my arm completely uncovered was not an act of anger, confession, or petty revenge, but simply my real life finally being allowed to breathe in the open air. The following morning, I boarded an interstate bus carrying a single duffel bag with both of my sleeves comfortably rolled up. My family respect had certainly arrived very late, but my true self-worth had never depended on their permission in the first place. Always remember that your true value is defined by your quiet strength and the integrity of your actions, not by the misinformed opinions of people who fail to see your worth. Never sacrifice your peace to prove yourself to those who choose not to understand you.